All right, we'll go ahead and call our committee of the whole meeting to order. And then let's start on the consent agenda items. We've got a couple of traffic control orders on here. Frank, I don't know if you have any additional insight other than what is on there. Both make a lot of sense, given the background.
If you have questions, I'll be more than willing to answer. They came through the traffic committee. One deals with keeping our speed limits consistent in front of Zinzer Elementary and using the new bright yellow signs, solar powered. And then Nixon 10th Street, restricting on-street parking when you're coming into and through the curve where Nixon goes around. And those both came from traffic committee, and then police chief and city engineer signed off on both of them.
I don't know if anybody's driven. Saturday morning I took the liberty of doing some of my drive-arounds, not drive-bys, drive-arounds, and I drove through there coming around that curve. That's it. Until you come to, I mean, you don't realize how tight that really is. So that one totally makes sense. And then I know the speed restrictions during the school hours has been talked about for a while, and there's been a lot of due diligence behind this. So to me, they all make sense. But are there any questions from the commission?
No, that 10th and Nixon, definitely.
That is tight, isn't
I
it?
can't go through there with a plow truck.
Well, imagine if there's cars out on the road. You literally can't get through there.
Right, and Nixon is so narrow anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. And then expenditures are 1.9 million. Any questions on those? And Mr. DeVries had a good call out today and had mentioned there was a couple that have come through lately and had not. So I'm glad that he did that. But good best practice, just giving it to him, and then he lets the commission know for approval on those. So that's the consent agenda. So we're covered there. If we look ahead a little bit into the resolutions, is there anything we want to leverage Dan for while he's out here and get ahead of the curve a little bit?
Dan came in sick today.
Yeah, I know. Hey, you just stay right.
Yeah.
90% there.
Okay.
So while he's here, if you folks would want to touch base on some of those three issues, I'm more than open to that.
So anything, let's real quick, we've got plenty of time here. Let's talk about the land use plan with subplan number 5, and maybe I'll even lean on Commissioner Gilbert to help pinch hit a little bit as well. Any background there from the Planning Commission perspective?
Yeah, well, this is one we put a lot of time into. Number 5 is our Kloop Street connection is what was always talked about there, and it's the area panel in the southeast corner of my part of the city.
Yep.
The highlights I would say is that we took the Kloop Street connection off of there. We talked about maybe allowing the pursuit of another type of connection, but definitely now that Betts owns that property that goes through that central chunk of that area, we didn't think it was prudent to continue to have that on our master plan. And Micron has always had some pretty aggressive ideas about what they want to do long term, and that's been a problem for them, the discussions about the Kloop Street connection. So moving forward with that changed. The other part of it is that now that we're not doing that, we've talked about trying to work with our partners in Grand Rapids to try and find some type of solution for the Panel and Alpine intersection, which is also very problematic. I don't know if you guys have any other big highlights. The one thing that I have for Dan as far as questions is making sure, did we get those little technical things cleaned up that we've talked about at planning?
Yeah, and I can come up with Mike. There were a couple of areas where in the previous 98 master plan there were some parts of the city near the border of Grand Rapids that we know would be used as either medium density or low density housing, and they're kind of covered in a gray industrial planned use designation, so we wanted to clean that up, and Commissioner Gilbert was good in seeing that edit that needed to be made. So that was the only major change since the Planning Commission took a look at this a couple of weeks ago. There were areas adjacent to the end of Rogers Street on the west, and down near the south end of town near Dunlap, off of Bristol, that both got converted to medium-density residential or low-density residential housing from industrial. Otherwise, the plan has gone through all of its iterations. We didn't hear any comments from the public. Like Commissioner Gilbert said, it is an effort to revisualize how you can potentially get another connection through from Bristol out to Walker in the future, where the Clue Street connection looks less and less likely given the economic circumstances and land ownership circumstances, and just re-envisioning different improvements at three focal areas, one being Panel and Alpine, one being kind of in that entire former Pit Trick site, and then one being at the Walker Avenue Railroad Bridge, where we do have a grant approved to bring that down to grade, so it's already one part of this plan that's in motion.
And I will say on the subject of railroad bridges, we did say that, we did have a note in there about the railroad bridge on Bristol, I believe, very broadly, nothing too specific on that because of the, I guess, mixed feelings on it from different areas in the community.
Speed bump. Well, on that same note, on that Subplan 5, you know, if we go to 4 Mile Fruit Ridge and we, you know, new streets up there, new development, we're gonna, you know, looking at $10 million or better to widen the overpass on Fruit Ridge, and here we got property down there. You got the old concrete plant, you got the concrete, the people are all concrete product. Marsman, you got a lot of land there that's zoned industrial, and it's not, and the traffic is getting worse, it's not getting any better. And yet, if we was to put either extend Clue or Panel up along the railroad and get it out so the trucks could get in and out, and, you know, I look at the city of Grand Rapids as over on their side of Alpine and Ann Street and everything, that's all changing and that's all going industrial. And it's like, we want to keep these people over here. We don't want them going over there to Walker, so they can come out onto Ann Street, they can come out onto Alpine. And so here we got, I'd look at this industrial stretch as an asset for the industry, but due to traffic concerns and everything, they're basically locked. I mean, it's, you know, to do that. And so they got railroad spurs, they got trucking companies that they could be doing a lot of, I think a lot of that land would develop better if they had better access. So I just really hate to see it taken right off the table. I'd like to see it left on the table and something be done with it in the future, that to get a route through there would be, you know, there's more than 2 companies down there other than Betts and Micron. You know, I mean, Betts gonna let these other trucking companies go through there? They're gonna have a toll booth set up, or because it's private?
So what we've talked about as far as long-term, because I mean, in an ideal world, we can get that connection from Bristol to Walker, is either following the railroad there along the north end of that area, or on the south end, they have, just south of Betts, there's a line across that we would try to follow. That would all, and both options are costly, would require some significant improvements, but in terms of having them on our master plan, those are kind of the options that we would consider pursuing per that language. Does that make sense, Dan?
Can I help out too for a little historical perspective?
Yeah.
Here's the whole issue for this subplan in a nutshell. For 20 years, your staff has been saying Clute Street is master planned to extend to Walker Avenue. And you can see Clute Street where the cursor is. Unfortunately, the public right-of-way does not extend to the westerly property line here. So between the end of that right-of-way and that property line is privately owned by Micron. So for 20 years, we've been arguing at Mineral Mining Board for the mine to the west that they need to grade so that Clute would eventually be connected. It just makes sense from a street network standpoint. Unfortunately, the folks from Micron have been adamantly against that extension the whole time I've been here. So, since 1998, your staff's been pushing water uphill, trying to get this connection prepped up. It makes perfect sense for everyone in the area. The fact that Walker doesn't use some of our tools for acquiring right-of-way also factors into the equation. So, that's one of the reasons Dan kicked off this Subplan 5, which is really a transportation-based thing. I mean, we're not recommending any changes to land use, it's just transportation essentially. And I think Dan, the Planning Commission, and you folks have looked at this a few times, and I agree with you, Dan. Food Street is the way to go. But unfortunately, practically, that doesn't seem very likely. So, I think we tried to work with the Betts folks, and Betts accounts for more than 50% of the truck traffic that goes to Panel and Alpine. So with their expansion, they will have an access for all of their industry to go out to Walker Avenue and then north to 96.
So it would help alleviate some of that heading out towards Alpine at that point. When they, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
Why are they so against extending Clute? I mean, what have they told us? What have they said?
What they have said, in my experience, is that they plan to, they have the property on the other side of Food Street and the property where they're at right now, and their plan is to wrap their building around Food Street, so that all of their property and building will be connected.
And we've tried over the years, you can
That
see all the
makes
vacant property there, we know that industry wants to operate in line, so we've tried to work with them on a footprint, particularly because they own so much property to the east of their building, and it's all flat sand. But they have, and it's on the record, mineral mining year after year, while that, what they call the trick pit was in operation, they were just dead set against it. So we took it as far as we could, and then when we were coming up on if you're familiar with the property, unless we get the city acquires the railroad right-of-way itself, at some point in the future, the grades there are really tough to work with. Some of that mining was 60 years ago, before there was any kind of mineral mining board, and the slopes are one-on-one, and it would take quite a bit of work to get a connection through there.
So we take the sand out for the, remove the Walker Bridge, we have a place to put it.
Some of that may be usable for utility work and restoration of the grade for the track, in case the track needs to come up.
So, what, the one where you go off Flute Street and extends up, and puts a curve in it up to the north and back around, that's unacceptable also?
I'd weigh in and say that we wanted to make sure there were options kind of shown in concept form, so that we're not saying, on the one hand, what we call the essential connection, Food Street is no longer essential. Future developers are not bound to making that connection, but there are options, and that being one of them. I don't have the exact image in front of me, but I think you're looking at the one with the options labels on there. So there's an option 1 on the very south end of the property, option 2 on the very north, and then there's one option where Food kind of hooks up and connects to the northerly route. That's something that could be looked into. Perhaps the Micron folks at the end of Food Street redevelop, but there may be some land that's able to be acquired that allows a right-of-way to kind of circle in around the north edge of that property and then loop in adjacent to that railroad right-of-way. As Frank said, that grade is going to be really challenging to work with, so that may not be the most plausible option, but it should be out there so that people still have that image of what we could strive for in the future as these different properties come together. There may be different chunks of land that can be acquired and road right-of-ways that can get put together over time.
So if you come by and want to widen Waldo Street and say, no way, I'm not selling you anything for right away, you're not going to force me to do it?
Waldorf?
Well, or any place. I mean, if a street project or Walker, we want to make them. who owned that property before that or after, or what conversation was dealt with there, but, I guess, you know, if one doesn't have to work with us, I guess that's kind of tough to see somebody else when we want to build a road or widen it or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think it would have been a really good opportunity if we had even a preliminary development plan that had some level of review from the Micron folks. And we never got past that stage of, we didn't know where they were gonna go with their redevelopment. We saw really early version of plans over the years, but until you, it seems like those kinds of trades happen when you get into the development review process, where you have some kind of development agreements and you work out where the road network goes as part of a redevelopment plan, where we just never really got that conversation on that property that holds the cards on that dead end.
How long has it been since we've had these conversations with Micron?
10 plus
Well, we've been
years.
involved with this subplanning process.
We've been talking to Micron for as long as I've been
Right.
with the city planning commission and
I
city.
think this goes back a decade
Okay.
plus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
At least to 2004.
Yeah.
That's when I started, and that's the first time I saw them at Mineral Mining Board. And we said, you can't take out sand because we need to keep that connection to Kloop. That's what's in your 98 master plan. So that's when we started to hear, nope, we're gonna build that building. So every year, I think we would, well, I know we would say, well, please bring that site plan in, because then this issue will go away. And it hasn't happened. So all I can tell you is, I think Dan and the Planning Commission has done a good job to say, if Kloot Street's not going to work, here's a couple of options, to the north and to the south. The south may work in the future, on the south side of that Betts property. There's environmental limitations there, but if you look at that image, you can see where the sanitary sewer line runs near the creek. So there's already kind of a road bed there. That may be your best hope long-term. From a pure planning standpoint, absolutely. We've been pushing for Kloot Street for years. The problem is, to get that right of way, you would probably have to use eminent domain. And out of all the commissions we've dealt with over the past 15 years, I haven't heard one person say use eminent domain to grab that right of way. And so that's where we're at.
and to that point, Betts also came in pretty heavily unfavorable to the development. So you might be talking not just that property that Micron has, but also having to go through all the way, cut that Betts property right in half, to build that road through, which is also pretty challenging.
I remember that, Steve. They were here not too terribly long ago. I don't remember if it was a special meeting. I think it was a special meeting about this during a planning meeting, and they weren't crazy about letting us be a part of that either.
And when we first introduced the concept, it was actually quite a few businesses from Bristol and Panel came out to the meeting and said, no way should that connection go through to Walker Avenue. So, and that was quite a boisterous group, and it was, the large number of the property owners out there. So from a staff standpoint, we say, well, if the traffic's bad at Alpine and Panel, then let's get Kloop to Walker, and then your trucks can go to 96 on a truck route. So I think Dan and the group have tried to talk that through, but it was just an impasse. And so I think the plan that has been put together tries to make the best of the situation.
One other thing, maybe the last big comment here, is whether or not there is another connection from Bristol through that property in Walker. Also in the plan was something that mirrored some of the development efforts of the Betts folks. That was to say we need a good access management network on that 60-acre former Trick Pit site. So as Betts continues to redevelop there, or if any other developers come and buy up some of that property, we need to have an access management network that I show in kind of dashed lines on one of those slides that reduces the number of driveways you have on Walker Avenue as sort of an inward-facing orientation, so you don't have a lot of truck traffic and loading and circulation out on Walker Avenue, where we just know there are still homeowners along that stretch up Waldo Street. So we want to have a sensitive and strategic access management network on that vet site and have it be developed as more of a PUD style development. And that's reflected in the PUD preliminary plans that we have from vets.
So here's this, oops, sorry. Last thing I'll say, and then I'll get out of your way on this one, but this is the planning area for Subplan 5. And Dan put this together to show the relationship between Alpine Avenue and Panel and 96 and Walker Avenue. So we always try and draw a study box, because in this case, that whole transportation network fits together. So you can see kind of, the relationship that staff and the planning commission is trying to build between those two intersections. And then right in the middle, you see Clute Street and the railroad right-of-way, and then the properties we're talking about here. So that was the study area, and what you see in the final report, which you folks have seen before too. This is the final step. Is the best case scenario for what we can do with the planned area.
What's that railroad right? Like from center track?
Oh boy, I would guess 80 to 90 feet, maybe 100. Yeah.
On the railroad right away?
Yeah.
So
There's definitely room. If in some time in the future, and Dan's got that in plan, if a future commission can negotiate to acquire that railroad right away, then potentially you have a road right there from Bristol to Walker.
I don't, given past history, I don't know if I would count, I wouldn't put any money down on that happening, so I want to be realistic. I mean, it's a nice thought, nice idea. I think one of the thoughts I have, I mean, this is 15 plus years that we've had go-arounds with this. It's not changed. And when I think of Betts and I think of the expansion, the acquisition they made, and was it last year? I think the development, 50 plus acres. They have right that is their private road, and I completely understand that they made an investment with their business and interest in mind, and they have been a very strong community partner for us in a number of ways. And I don't begrudge the fact that they want to keep that as a private road for their truck traffic. And that'll help us with the Alpine and Panel corridor, but there just doesn't seem to be any other options. I mean, what we have is what we have. So any other thoughts, suggestions from the group? They're planning commission related, or?
Well, I think we put into the plan what we thought was the best way forward.
Agreed. Okay. Any thoughts from the commission on this? Any other thoughts? I hear you. I hear you. Yes. Yep. So, okay. All right. From that one, Richmond Farms. I see Mr. Grassman in the audience. I think how far we've come with this, just a quick overview of this, squeeze a little bit in before the 7 o'clock start, but when I look at how far as a city, we're very appreciative of how far the developers come and the adjustments that they've made. And I think there's one thing that stuck out to me is there's been a lot of listening that's taken place and a lot of work that's been done. We're all obviously very aware, we've heard it from a number of residents in various means that future road connectivity, we have to have consideration out to 3 Mile at this point. But for right now, what we're looking at is just the first 22, and I'm comfortable with what we see here, but I don't know if there's anything else there, Dan, you want to share? I know this is one for the second ward commissioners. We've been studying quite a bit for quite a while with things, but I'm excited to see some of the housing take place there. It's definitely needed. But
yeah, my only addition would be that this is more of a three-dimensional version of the two-dimensional plan you reviewed back in November. You folks reviewed this very project back in November. That was called the tentative preliminary plat stage. So that was just looking at the layout, how many lots, which there's 22 lots in this phase, that they meet the current zoning requirements. And now we're getting more into the weeds of how does the drainage work, what are the grades on the road in relation that based on some of the concerns you heard during the first phase of review, there's now a precise plat that's going to be required prior to the next phase of development. So that is as you know from the other projects you've been reviewing lately, a legal description of the center line of a road that's going to be codified in our zoning ordinance. So that says, while it can be amended or adapted a little bit, it will require that future development kind of adheres to this main spine that will eventually tie Richmond Street up to 3 Mile Road. So that's a different project. It's moving along at its own pace. We have received the precise plat survey drawings, but that's just so that you know those comments were heard and they're being responded to, and we'll keep that process moving along while this project continues to develop at a phase-by-phase basis. So right now, again, you're looking at a 22-lot residential project, single-family home sites with a connection across from Mullins, extending north off of Richmond.
So if the economy takes a dive, we're gonna have some place for the snowplow to turn around?
There will be a temporary cul-de-sac, I believe, on the northern end of Mullins Avenue there. Can't recall what, I don't think there's much of a concern on the proposed east-west street because there's not going to be driveways or access really on those streets until future phases develop.
We agreed not to put any driveways on the crossroad, was that Craigleton? We agreed not to put any driveways on Craigleton until it's either developed to the east or west.
Okay. No, just that it wasn't shaded up into the cul-de-sac, so I just curious, but it's temporary. I could understand that.
Good, if it's, why don't we go at 7 o'clock, we'll go ahead and start with the regular commission meeting. Be fine, thank you, Dan. I'll actually ask Commissioner Kent if you do the invocation for us, please.
Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing everyone to this meeting safely and for the beautiful day filled with sunshine. Please protect our military, our police, fire departments, and everyone serving and protecting others. We ask you to guide the city commission in the decisions we make. We pray and give thanks as we are blessed to live in this great community. Lord, we ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. If you'd all rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask our deputy clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Carey.
Present.
Commissioner Kent.
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Present.
Commissioner DeShane.
Present.
Commissioner Howland.
Present.
Commissioner Gruters.
Present.
And Commissioner Glanville is absent.
All right, and if I could have a motion to approve the absence of Commissioner Glanville.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner DeShane. If I could get that out, I'm slowed on the draw tonight, people. Support by Commissioner Gruters. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes, and we get a 2-for-1 here with the February 25th commission meeting and then our March 4th commission strategic planning session as well. Look for a motion for approval on those.
Make motion?
I have a motion for Commissioner Gilbert.
I'll support that.
Support from Commissioner Kent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. We'll open at this point for any public comment on agenda items. Going once, going twice. Public comment closed. And then in your package, you have appointments for 2 new members to the Community Relations Committees, and maybe a little background. I'll kind of tee this up and let Commissioner Howland add it. So what we're looking to do with the reshaping with a couple of the committees is to help them with the activity and the involvement. Community relations means just that. So we're looking to expand that group, and we have a meeting coming up in early April. Will be the second Thursday that we'll be getting on the calendar. And one of the things with that is having them more involved with the community events and our community presence as a whole, and not just the once or twice a year type of thing. So we've had some conversation. I'd like to see them take a much more active role with our new communications manager as she returns, and help balance that load out there, and also take the connectivity they have within the community. So I believe at this point, with the addition of Brandon and Carla, and then Julie Wilson that we added not that long ago, we've added 3 very high energy individuals to join the committee, and I think that they're going to help supplement what's already there. So I would look, do we need a motion on this one? Look for a motion for appointment.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Holland, support from Commissioner DeShane. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agendas. The 3 different items on there are traffic control orders and then the expenditures. We covered these a bit in the committee of the whole meeting, and before I'd ask for a motion, is there any other questions on this before we move forward with them? We're good? Okay, so I'll open up for a motion to approve the 3 items on the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion of Commissioner Howland.
I'll support.
Support from Commissioner Gruters. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Next on the list, we were just discussing the resolution 19-510 for our subplan number 5, future land use plan. I do want to thank, before we open up any other discussion on this from the commission, is the, not just Dan Power, but Frank's been actively involved as well. Our planning commission has really, they've really dug into the to the dirt on this one, and really pleased with the information we have here. And as we were just talking to the committee of the whole, that there is probably the ideal situation right now is not one that's on the table. It's not been there for getting close to 2 decades now, since we've started looking at this. So based on the information, all the research that's been done from particularly the Planning Commission and staff, we feel at this point this is the best plan to go forward with. So I'll open up for any other comment from the commissioners. Commissioner Kent, I see you reaching for the button. All right.
No, we're good.
Okay. All right.
That was a long
I
one.
will entertain any motion from the group to move forward on resolution 19-510.
I will make that motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gilbert,
I'll support.
support from Commissioner DeShane. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. And then next on our list is Resolution 19-511, the Richmond Farms Phase 1, 22-lot residential project. This is the final preliminary plat. We were just discussing this in our committee of the whole meeting as well. Any other discussion from commission on this or questions? We have Mr. Grassman in the room. We have Dan Power here as well.
I do have one
Oh, go
comment.
ahead.
And I just want to thank everyone involved. There's been a lot of work on this. It started out, we got a lot of feedback from residents in the area, and a lot of work has come into this that got us to the point where at our last planning commission meeting, the discussion was very positive. Everyone kind of got to a point of mutual agreement that we can move forward and everyone can sleep comfortably knowing that we're not tearing apart the fabric of society.
Yep, exactly.
So just very happy with the progress we made.
Well, and I think this is really a great example of how, public meetings and what have you are supposed to work. There's been feedback given, developers worked with us, staff's worked with us. We really have, I think, a solid plan moving forward. So any other discussion from the commission then? Will be.
I got phone calls, people inquiring what's going to be next.
Well-
So there's a lot of concern out there, and especially with traffic.
And I have the utmost confidence at this point with the precise plat, with the steps we're taking, the work that the developer has done in working with us and listening to the residents' concerns and even city staff's guidance. I think that next step will be, in my mind, I believe is very clearly defined and has some some lanes that we'll be staying within, so no pun intended there. So, all right, with that in mind, I'll open up for a motion for approval then on the Richmond Farms Phase 1 22-lot residential project, the final preliminary plat.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Commissioner DeShane,
I'll support.
support from Commissioner Gruters. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion pass. Good. Thank you again, Mr. Grassman. Appreciate all the work you've done with us. Next on the list is the first reading of ordinance property rezone 19-511 to amend zoning of 3280 4 Mile Road in Section 5. Either Dan or Frank, would you mind a little bit of background on this? And then we also have Mr. Bowl in the audience as well for questions from Vista Development if we need to.
How about if I can take the first crack at giving you
Yep.
an intro on this particular project, and then might ask you to reflect back to Frank's presentation at the last city commission meeting, which was related to Subplan 1A, future land use plan for the city.
Okay.
That was kind of laying the framework for the future land use that the city wants to see in this area. Kind of like with the project I just talked about with Subplan 5, we have a private development interest that is driving some of the conversation here, but there's a bigger picture of transportation and future land use that we need to look at as a city as well. So as we worked on that future land use planning process that Frank reviewed at the last meeting, we have also been reviewing a redevelopment proposal by the Visser Group called PEG Development. What they would like to do here, and there are a couple of images that show it, and I think you're looking at the main one there. I have a rundown of statistics on what this plan shows, and I'll read them really briefly. So there are about 2,800 lineal feet of public road proposed in this first phase of development. On the phase 1 stretch that you see there, and that's really the connection of Northridge Drive from where it dead ends right now, just west of Peachridge out. Where it hooks up to the north and then connects to the west. About 1.2 million square feet of total building footprint area on this plan. That's certainly liable to change. These building sites are kind of conceptual at this phase, but this shows you a layout that could work if the project builds out to its fullest. About 2,000 parking spaces, about 160 loading docks, public utilities and stormwater improvements, a 100-foot wide berm along 4 Mile Road, and further details will be provided during the different individual site plan reviews for these individual sites. So this is a big project. There's about 129 acres proposed to be rezoned. A lot of it is actually currently zoned industrial. It's zoned what's called industrial park MPD zoning. Some of it, about 33 acres, is zoned agricultural, a stretch that's close to 4 Mile. And the rezoning is proposed to go to industrial plan unit development. So the idea here is to have a comprehensive development site with all the road network, all the drainage, all the grading, all the utilities are designed together in this picture project. So I believe the Vista Group has individual sites they're interested in building first, and that's probably what's driving a lot of the proposal here. But they show a layout which could work, which would meet this new zoning that they propose, and would meet the, most importantly, the subplan number 1A, future land use fabric that we've gone over recently. Perhaps the most important part of this project is that we are looking at a continuation of Northridge Drive to the west, where it would link up with another section of Northridge Drive that has to be paved to complete that through connection from Walker Avenue all the way out to Fruit Ridge Drive. This project itself does not count for the last leg, the roughly western half of the picture here you see on that slide. That would be a project that we are looking at separately. The engineering department is looking at special assessment and ways to work through that construction of Northridge Drive on the west end. And what we do know is that before any building sites are approved on this private development project on the east side, that road has to be complete. So there has to be a continuation of Northridge Drive all the way from Fruit Ridge to Walker before construction on this project can begin. So what we're gonna see in the long term, dovetailing with this project, is an overall truck network, overall transportation network that works a lot better, and provides that bypass along I-96 to the north that kind of moves the traffic away from those problematic intersections on 4 Mile, closer to the main points of ingress and egress on the highway. So we have a bit of a transportation and local planning slant or preference on this project, but it doesn't belittle that this will also be a large industrial project of its own interest. And I'm sure Greg Bull can speak to what their plans are for industrial growth on the site as well.
Commissioners, questions? I'll even lead Commissioner Gilbert from our Planning Commission. I know we went through this early last month, and the approval and whatever. Is there any additional color you can provide to what Dan's already shared?
No, I just think we're very excited to finally have this road go through. We've got a long cul-de-sac on the one side and getting that hooked up to the other. We've always had some pretty big plans for Northridge Drive, and finally starting to see a lot of that come to fruition is pretty exciting from the planning side of things.
Yep. Good. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Kent, go right ahead.
Well, this is a pretty picture, and so we got this big puzzle up there and a lot of pieces, but I have no idea where Fruit Ridge, Peach Ridge, 4 Mile, whatever, 96. But when I got to this, I got to page 6 and then I couldn't get any further. But I did make it to page 3. The subject lots include portions of 3224 Mile Northwest, 3384 4 Mile Northwest, and 3421 3 Mile Northwest, and all of 3284 Mile, and 3309 3 Mile Road. And I'm going, where am I? Am I on 3 Mile or 4 Mile? I thought 96.
Yeah.
What are those addresses on 3 Mile got to? I can't follow this, and I surely can't follow that line.
Okay, that's a really good question. That's why I think it's going to be more and more important to make the data that we have on our standard noticing template more visual and more map oriented, because I think that's a legitimate cause for confusion. The 3 Mile address you see on there is the stretch of the Coopersville and Iron Railway that crosses this property. At some point, it must link up with a 3 Mile address and it stretches that whole way. But the parent address number for that triangular piece, kind of at the bottom third of the site, is, I believe, that 3 Mile address. What that language on the notice was meant to indicate is all the different parcels that are being proposed to be combined into this project area or are affected by this project. So that includes a variety of parcels. They had to acquire some land from one of the property owners on 4 Mile, and then there's 3 or 4 lots inside their site. They're the old farm properties that have been combined into this project. So there's a parcel fabric here that's going to be simplified by the project that includes things like the 3 Mile address coming from the railroad that they have to cross as part of the project. So yeah, I can point on this screen, if you'd like me to, which of these parcels on the notice are affected by the rezoning. But there's one map, I don't know if it's, I can probably navigate to it in the packet. There's one map that shows kind of the overlay of the proposed rezoning with the existing parcel fabric. Showing that.
It's gonna show.
Apologize for the
No, it's all right.
copy navigation. Here's the overlay of their project area on the current zoning and the current parcel fabric. So you have one complete parcel here. This is the railroad property that somehow has a 3 Mile address. This parcel here, 2 parcels in this area, and then it included this parcel, which had included some of the stretch on 4 Mile. And then this may have been the one where they purchased property from the adjacent But you end up with 5 to 7 parcels in here that overlay in an odd configuration, but you can see where their project boundary actually lies in relation to Dykstra and Northridge Drive up here.
Where it currently dead ends there.
And Fruit Ridge is over here off the screen.
Thank you.
And we'll try to get there wasn't one on this plan, we'll certainly get a location map on the final area site plan when this comes back. There will be a final area site plan review if this is approved. It's more of a detailed set of design plans for the road, as well as the first construction site.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, other thoughts? You know, one of the things in looking at this is we've already started, have allocated the funding from I believe they're already, if they're not out surveying right now, they are going to be doing it really quickly in preparation for connecting Northridge to the west there. And then when, you know, you look at the, really the rest of the area there and the impact, the one painful realization is that Fruit Ridge Bridge is just not currently set up to be able to handle. So we're, you know, going through that resubmission process right now. So there's a lot of, I would commend staff in that we've had a lot of foresight in getting ahead of this and this development. So there's nothing in here that scares me. You know, it's nothing unsurprised either. It's the day we knew that this day would come, that this would start to move, and I think we're here. So there's still some moving parts behind the scenes on this before we see that final site plan, but I'm comfortable with what I see here, and I'm not sure if we're ready to make a motion to move forward with that rezoning at this point in time, or the first reading to amend the zoning for this. Thoughts? So I'll be happy to entertain a motion if somebody has this for the to rezone, first reading of the ordinance, property rezone 19-511 to amend the zoning of 3284 Mile Road in Section 5.
I'll make that motion.
And actually, if I can take a quick step back, just something doesn't seem right there. This is 19-511, but 19-511 is right before that.
It's an ordinance property rezone.
Thank you, just making sure. Okay. So we have a motion from Commissioner Holland. We have support from Commissioner Gilbert. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Mr. Bull, thank you for all the work. Dan, thanks for making it through the day and night. So you're free to go now. Yep, take care, Greg.
I hope you feel better, Dan.
Thanks, I'm good.
All right. Seeing how our last visitor just ran for the door, there is nobody else for public comment. I'll open up at this point for Commissioner and City Manager comments. Frank, we'll start with you to your left.
Okay, I will be brief. Daryl's on vacation this week, so we're filling in for him. But I want to let you know that on Friday,
Please do.
Yep.
Jose Levine, the master plan consultant. We've been redlining their work and nursing them along for quite a while, and also raising issues about the budget. And I'll let the mayor fill in for you.
Yeah, so there was a point in time, I think my first week in the office that had noticed. I went online to take the survey, and this was one of my first red flags. Went online to take the survey, and I found not only a number of typos, I found other municipalities and other projects information actually in our survey that our residents and businesses were taking online. I sent a letter at that point knowing how much we'd already been billed because we just had a conversation with updates around that. And I sent a letter, and actually the letter at that, or the email at that point, I do know the word underwhelmed was in there. I was actually quite displeased, and sometimes the emails might be a little direct, and this one was fairly direct, and there were crickets. There really wasn't much response to it. So staff had conversations with them, kind of lit the fire, we thought, and we had our community event night, and I still feel like it was very boilerplate. So we had a consistent what's taken place over the last year, and I talked with former Mayor Heisinger about this as well, and this is not something that it's just taken this pivot to the right or to the other direction as of late. This has been ongoing for a while, where the efforts that they're putting forth are very contrary to what was promised when we started the agreement. When we sat here and we had all of the companies come in here, they were head and shoulders above everybody else. We had a number two, a very easily identifiable number two, but number one was so far in front. And the president CEO sat here and promised us a lot of things, the customization. We know your city. We're going to learn it even more. And I'll continue to be just underwhelmed but gravely disappointed with the effort so far. So we went through this and having conversations, expressing our disappointment and concern that they're not fulfilling terms of the agreement. So this has been ongoing for a couple of months, and I haven't called a ton of attention to it. We're hoping that they could get things turned around here. And we actually sat in here, had a meeting the afternoon of the night of the community visioning workshop, and it was pretty darn direct from staff. And Frank was. I saw a different tone and side to Frank than I've seen in the years I've worked with him. So that being said, if I'm that partner, that planning firm, and I'm getting, the mayor's not happy, the staff is not happy. There's been a lot of communication. We've been questioning the amount that we've been billed and the deliverables back from that work. They don't match up. And we felt like we continued to be I wouldn't even say pacified. We're just being ignored. And so there got to be a point as we started to have conversations after the community vision and workshop. Again, deliverables coming from that were little to nothing, and we had been billed at that point a little over $60,000 by our estimates, and going through the deliverables given back to us. That amounts more to be in the low to mid $20,000 range. So we feel that we've been overbilled at this point in time. So we advised them over a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that we would be discussing termination of the agreement with council, thinking we would hear something about, hey, we're going to work with you on this, we're going to do better. We haven't got nothing on this. And and this is from the business person in me, I don't think I have seen as much of a complete disregard for promises made in a contractual arrangement. And it's decades since I've seen something, if I've even seen something like this. So we talked with the city attorney, and definitely advised that he said, you have a case here, it's time that you can part ways. So the letter has been sent to make that change. So we're trying to recoup what we have identified as being roughly $25,000 to come back to us in a refund from what they've paid for. If we can get that, we'll walk away at that point, and we're going to cut our losses. Unfortunately, we're almost a year and a half into this process at this point, and we have nothing than some white paper with blank ink on it right now to show for our results. So it is terrible, and I would think with a company that's had the reputation that they've had a lot of turnover. But when I think to the communication, not just written, the verbal, the in-present communication we've had with them, it's been direct. I mean, you're not doing what you promised. You're not doing the job that you committed to. We're about ready to leave you, and it just hasn't gotten any better. So there's a point where you just say, okay, we're cutting our losses, and we're saying enough's enough, we're done. So that's long-winded thing. I'm a little wound up because I'm disappointed. It's a year and a half later, and not for staff's effort by any means. It is just a lot of unmet promises, and so we're going to move forward. Our clear number 2 back to those meeting minutes was McKenna. And what we have talked about doing is having discussion on the February 21st agenda. We from number 2 to number 3 was a significant drop. 1 to 2, there was a gap, but definitely from 2 to 3, there was not even a close number 3 or 4 that responded to it. So, and there is obviously a very discernible skill set with a master planning firm that we're looking for. And one of the things that's become apparent to me throughout this, more apparent to me throughout this process has been, to city staff's credit, to our planning commission's credit, that document has somewhat biblical proportions at times, because it's the gospel. That's what we go to for everything. And we're waiting and waiting, and we have nothing, and we've paid the bills as a good partner, and we still have nothing. So at this point, I think we're moving forward. What you'll see probably, we've got some time to discuss between now and the 25th meeting, and the due diligence is probably a recommendation from staff to move forward with McKenna to stay on track. What our net cost will be out of this is, assuming we get the 25 back from House Levine, the $25,000 would be our net increase at this point, would be a plus $10,000 above what we had budgeted. So we budgeted $100,000. This will end up right around $110,000. It's obviously, it's a very painful lesson, but when we checked references. I mean, everything, and they're just significant turnover, and the company culture changed there. So.
I will say that it was, they did such a fantastic presentation, and I was just kept waiting, when are we getting the wow, when are we getting the wow? And then I just didn't know how long it was gonna take, because they basically overpromised and pretty much underwhelmed us. But Frank, how is the camaraderie with McKenna and city staff? Do you have any history or background with them? Or?
But the good thing is Christopher Corey, who would be the principal, is a local person.
Okay.
Went to East Grand Rapids.
Grew up in the area.
Grew up in the area.
I do remember that.
Yep.
Very familiar with Walker. And I've already seen more just in the ideas that he's bouncing around from him than I did really from House Levine the whole time. So we will supply you folks. He's working on a scope of services. I've asked him to come in on the 25th and explain how he's going to fill in the gaps here for us. And do it in a way that's consistent with the subplans that we've been going through. It'll be one step up from the subplans. We're getting down into the weeds with a lot of detail. Planning Commission, you folks and staff, with all these sub-area plans that keep coming through. You need one layer up, how to do it in more of a general neighborhood planning level, but then check all the boxes that we would normally have in a master plan. And I will let you know that we discussed 2 items here tonight, both road items, that were in your 1998 master plan. So like Gary says, we need something that we can refer to, something that talks about road connectivity, talks about the people that live here and will live here, future land use, those kind of things, densities, etc. So I don't know Chris personally, but he does have the local ties that we need to pull this together. But this will be a good opportunity for you on the 25th to vet him out thoroughly and say, hey, how are we going to get this done, Chris? And let's go through your scope, because the one thing that did help us was House Levine started to, and I won't get into the gory details for you folks, but they kept referencing back to the scope when they were underperforming. And I said, okay, we're going to sit down with that scope and that budget that you sold the city on. And that's the argument that we made back to them in the letter on Friday, is we just went right back to the scope and contract. So, scope and contract, very important.
Absolutely.
And that's what we'll bring forward on the 25th.
And I think I would add even to that, previous and current planning chairs have been involved and been in some of the meetings, the conversations, they've been kept up to speed. And I think the one clear thing is we've gone through what I thought was a pretty exhaustive RFP process initially. We had a clear number one, we had a clear number two, and conversation, the guidance that I've given to Frank and to the others is we don't have to overcomplicate this, and that we've gone through a public, transparent process. We have a clear number two. We're already behind the eight ball in a significant level, so that's kind of where we're at. I'm had a chance. I'd ask him to connect with Chris, and Chris has been here a couple of times now, and just getting information ready should they potentially be awarded that piece. So that's kind of where we're at. Sorry.
No, I just wondered from a budget standpoint, now that they've used up to 110,000, do we have in reserve enough money to get McKenna started on board?
So we have at this point, with what we've paid so far, which is a little over 60 to Halcyon Levine, we're
Okay.
looking to get 25 back, I think
Okay.
is the rough number right now.
Right.
Our net, because McKenna's, go back to Halcyon Levine, their RFP was the most expensive. And this is not typically this commission's MO, that we're very fiscally conscious, but we felt what they were promising to deliver was so, so intensive, so,
Well, they have the whole package.
they told us what, I almost felt like they told us what we wanted to hear, and they failed. So our net at this point, we've budgeted 100,000.
Okay.
We're planning on getting some back, either before potential legal action, and I won't go too much further on to Mike on that, before that, or with or without that. We're looking at roughly about an extra 10,000 from the 100,000 we've already budgeted. So we're not blowing the 100, and then it's only our net out of all of this. By the time we get the money back, make sure I clarify that, time we get the money back for services that have not been performed, have not met expectations, our net, in addition to what we budgeted, is only $10,000 from the 100,000 we have. And I don't want to say only 10,000, it's a significant
Right,
amount,
significant.
but
It
we're,
could be 50.
yeah, it could be worse. But I think that's where I want to commend staff and even the planning commission, some of the key stakeholders. The communication was very quick, very deliberate, and I think we got ahead of this before it could get much worse, and said, no, this is it, the line in the sand's here, we're done, and we're not going to be taken advantage of any further.
That's good.
Are we under any kind of a, what's the timeline or deadline?
That's what I was
Like with the state? Are we,
No deadline. It's self-imposed.
I mean, it's every 20 years, but,
Yeah, there's no hard and fast rule for master
Okay.
plans. And also, keep in
That's
mind
good.
that we've been doing subplanning since 2005, and that's what we did again today. So by the time, now that these two are done, Dan and I are going to be picking up this Gateways area that will expand all the way over to the Richmond Plat area. So that we'll start to precisely plat and plan this whole section of town. And then South Walker is the last one, which really is going to be density and water. Those two things go together. And by the time we get all these subplans done by the end of the year, you will have covered about 80% of the city at a very detailed level. So is there a deadline? No. And this sits on top of all of your subplans. So don't feel that we're in a corner from a budget standpoint. We labeled this thing Walker 2040. So if we get it approved in 2020, it'll be good for a 20-year plan.
good.
And we,
Thanks, Frank.
Yep, I'm sorry. We'll have discussion on the 25th about this, and feel free to have conversations with Frank, no more than 4 at a time, please, at the same time. But I'm, given the fact I reflect back to notes and minutes from that meeting, that when McKenna made their presentation, and I remember even Chris sharing the story, he used to run cross-country and run through Johnson Park, and really that was an appealing piece, and that was talked about with the large group that was here that night. The fact that we had such a clear number two, I tend to be risk averse. This is one for me that has little to no risk, because we went through an exhaustive RFP process, but I also want this commission to feel comfortable we make this next decision, and that's why Chris will make sure he's here on the 25th for discussion, and that we're all comfortable again with this. And I think he's heard the message loud and clear that we won't be taken advantage of again. And I don't anticipate any challenges there.
And they have an office, McKenna has an office in Grand Rapids now.
Sure.
So that's nice.
Nice.
Yeah, he's working out of the west side of the state. So it's nice to have someone who you can say, hey, come on over, I'll show you something.
Yep.
Or you can go knock on his door
Or you
and
can
say.
Oh, good. Thanks, Frank. It's good discussion around this, and appreciate all the due diligence being done. Anything else from the manager's office then? Okay. All right, Commissioner Kent?
Oh, sure. I got a lot of questions and frustrations sometimes over some of these plans and whatnot, but, Planning Commission, Frank and Dan, they're covering all the bases and everything, and I think when I look at stuff and it's like, yeah, traffic light at Panel and Alpine and Panel and Leonard Street, not gonna work, and I think about Cascade Road and Hall Street, Cascade Road and Spalding, there's two lights that work together that's been working great for years, and it's like, so, maybe they don't think it would work, but that's, this day they have, with computers and everything else on those things that they can make them work together, but, sorry, I asked so many questions, but I just want to get
And
a
I
clear
agree with Dan.
understanding.
I've seen those viaduct signals work, you time them together, they were doing those in the 70s.
Yeah.
But keep in mind that both of those intersections are in the city of Grand Rapids.
Right.
So we tried to say, hey, your master plan is Subplan 5, has advisory comments to Grand Rapids for both Panel and Ann Street on Alpine.
And they have been to a number of the meetings that we've had with the public. I mean, not just one person, but multiple people from GR have been present, so.
But feel free to make your comments,
Yep.
we would rather talk about it here.
Yep.
Well, it's just like the place I work, that offered to pay to fix the street out in front. It was one of the worst streets in the city, but they wouldn't take the money, and they wouldn't do it until they were ready to do it, so. But it's a sad thing to see. I mean, it's tough and I think that, the old St. Mary's Cement, that's closed, and nothing's went back in there and different things, and I really think that some more of that property would flourish and be a win-win for the city, but, not to connect over to Ann Street would be, that's still in the city.
That's, once you cross Panel and the railroad tracks to get to Ann, it's all in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
So it's in your plan. If Grand Rapids ever decides to pick it up, someone here can say, hey, we have this plan, let's do it.
Yeah. So all we can do is try. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Commissioner DeShane?
I just want to say that Gary, I thought you did a good job with our strategic planning session. That was a lot of people, a lot of comments, a lot of interaction, and you did a nice job.
Thank you.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, just a couple of things. Just to remind everybody, Capitol Conference is next week. So if you haven't made your reservations, please make them as quick as you can. It's a great learning experience for any level of commissioner. Secondly, Community Relations Committee. Gary touched on that a lot. But it's no longer business as usual with the Community Relations Committee. We need to redefine what that is to a higher level of visibility throughout the city. And not only for the events that we have already going on, but it could affect events coming in the future. So there will be more to come on the Community Relations Committee. And then there is a little pocket park at the end of Clayton, which is 3rd Ward, of course. It's a very small park, and I've had the residents that have come to me and asked me if there's any way that during the summer months we could have some type of porta-john out there for the families.
West Chesterfield.
Right, right.
I'll follow up with DPW on that.
Okay, thanks, Frank. I mean, they were all concerned, they love using that park, it's right in their neighborhood.
That's a nice
The
little park
problem
right in there,
is-
yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice little park. The
And you don't know
problem
it's
is,
there.
You don't unless you live in the
Exactly.
neighborhood.
They like that.
But, so, and they were just wondering if we could help them out that way because, you know, a lot of them live 2 blocks away and their little girl is
Sure.
3 or 4, so.
That's a great idea.
No,
Yeah,
makes sense.
So if you could get back with me, Frank, I'd appreciate it.
I will get you in the loop.
And that's it for me.
Well, thank you. Commissioner Gruters?
Nothing for me.
All right. Commissioner Gilbert?
All set.
From our deputy clerk?
Nothing at this time.
Oh, wow, well, stuff. All right, couple quick things. I had, I won't go to every single coffee and thing from the strategic planning. I do have the survey results. I just got them into Excel today. You know, I thank you, everybody. It was really good feedback, actually. It was helpful and all that. So I'll send those actually out sometime tomorrow with some feedback, some connections to the results there. This definitely was one from a capital improvement plan. We felt this was about budgets. This was about getting our arms around the finances of what does the next 3, 4, 5 years look like, and those big rocks that we're going to have to tackle. So that being said, this I would say was a little bit drier, a little bit more around the numbers. I'd like something that's more collaborative as we go into next year, so look for that to come. I did have the opportunity on Friday, Commissioner Glanville and I, Commissioner DeShane was out in a much nicer place at that point in time. We had a community coffee over at the Apple Tree Community Center over off Leonard Wilson there, and actually had, I think, the time that I was there, probably a good 6, 7 residents nonstop that were there at all times. And Officer Harkman did a great job, as he always does, just the interaction with things. And it was nice, Commissioner Glanville, to get a feel, and she met a few people. So I like it when we're active out in the community like that. We had our audit information at the Grand Valley Metro Council meeting and things. I really do believe we are getting, there's a very measurable ROI that we get for our investment in supporting the Metro Council. And I know that our staff is highly thought of there, but that we put X amount of dollars in, we get that back in a very high return rate from that. So, but the audit's nice to look at the finances and see things are in order there. And Vredeveld Hafner actually does their auditing as well. So I know that there's high standards in place there because we use them as well. I had a chance, I had breakfast the other morning with Jerry Hopkins, superintendent at Kennewa Hills, and then ran over to March's Reading Month after that at Zinzer and had a chance to go through the new gymnasium. And I was like in absolute awe. I mean, this is, I want to go back. I mean, it was a nice big gymnasium. The lobby down by the gymnasium has all these little button lights up there. I mean, it's a very welcoming, a very inclusive type of atmosphere that's shifting. It's not, they're getting away from that traditional, hallways that are dark and dreary type of thing. It's very open. The gymnasium is just huge, long overdue for that neighborhood. But I'd commend the school district. They did it right. They did not do this cutting any corners. They very practical approach to things, but just exciting to see for that neighborhood, and I think for the school district, the investment being made there. So I think with that in mind, that is all that I have. Anything else from the group? Good in order? I'll entertain a motion for us to adjourn for the evening then.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, Commissioner Gruder, support for Commissioner Howland. I'm glad you're feeling better too. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.